Do you ever see a successful woman on your feed or in a magazine and think, wow, it must be nice to have it so easy? Well, think again. Behind that glossy cover or smiling face is a ton of hard work, countless failures, and endless learning experiences. I'm Rebecca Minkoff, and I'm here to tell you that success isn't a walk in the park. It takes grit, resilience, and a willingness to take risks. That's why I created Superwoman, a podcast that peels back the varnish and gets into the nitty-gritty of what it takes to make it as a woman in today's world. From luminaries and game changers to women you've never heard of but should, this podcast is here to inspire you to take your next leap, no matter how daunting it may seem. We'll explore the sacrifices these women have made, the highs and lows they've experienced, and the lessons they've learned along the way. So if you're ready to be inspired and learn from some of the most successful women out there, join me on Superwomen. Together, we'll uncover the stories behind the successes and prove that with hard work, determination, and a little bit of luck, anything is possible. Hey everyone, you're listening to Superwomen. Today's special episode is actually one I recorded with Dr. Lara Devgan, a board-certified plastic surgeon, a friend. We did a double header, meaning back-to-back recordings. I was on her podcast, she was on mine. You're definitely going to want to check out both. We dove into what it's like to be a mother of 6, dealing in the world of plastic surgery, how she has shaped her career, and the book nerd that she is. Take a listen. So welcome everyone. This is a non-traditional Superwomen episode because I'm in this gorgeous woman's office today because we're doing a double header back to back.
Yes, we're doing a double header. So welcome to my space. I'm so happy to be on Superwoman.
So we've known each other quite a long time. I think the first time we met was when you came to an appearance I did at Saks Fifth Avenue. And I was like, why is this successful, incredible woman showing up at one of my events?
It was so fun. And that was great. And I feel like we knew each other on social before.
We did.
And then it was fun to meet in person.
And then
it was like pandemic era.
Pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
And then you were wearing the evil eye ring and I commented on it and you literally like, oh, here, I have this ring for when people comment on it. I have a couple and you gave me that beautiful ring and I wore it into the ground.
Yes. Oh my God. I know. That was this funny custom that I came upon. Actually, I complimented somebody's evil eye ring and the woman, this was many years ago, took it off her hand and gave it to me. And then I sourced it. It was this cute Swarovski crystal piece. And so then I did that for you. If you do that for someone, you should pass that on too to someone.
I know. I gotta get your source so I can have like backup.
But it's so cool because then you have this like special friendship connection with someone. And then as a side note, did you see the most recent season of Curb Your Enthusiasm when Larry David has this whole gambit, which is like, if you want something of someone's, just compliment it.
Oh my God.
And it made me think of that because that's obviously not at all what was going on.
No. And it was the last thing I expected you to do would be like, here you go. You can have it. And I was like, I can have it. Okay. So you have built an incredible, not only vertical business with everything you do in the beauty space, but then branded products. So I would love to start, like, what got you into the business that you're in, caring about women, what they look like, making them feel better and greater?
Yeah. Well, as you know, I'm a board certified plastic surgeon and the founder of my skincare company, Dr. Devgan Scientific Beauty. And for as long as I can remember, I've been interested in art and identity and anatomy. And I grew up as a little kid as a classically trained artist. Our home was near the old Getty Museum in Malibu, and I used to take art classes there all the time. And so looking at the world through the lens of art and anatomy has always been something that's been fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And that led to an interest in plastic surgery because it's really the perfect blend of being a very specific and medical type of working artist. And the reason that I started thinking about plastic surgery, medical aesthetics, skincare, all of this stuff is because I think women of our generation grew up with these very weird beauty standards that were very self-abnegating and always, for me, felt other. And I felt like there was a more nuanced and subtle way to approach the concept of plastic surgery, that we didn't have to dichotomize the idea of being a woman of substance and someone who wanted to look cute when they exited their home. And I always found that when I felt pretty and put together, it made me feel like I was performing at the best part of my performance curve. And I was a nicer wife and a better mom and a better doctor. And I like that idea as a form of confidence and empowerment for other people.
Yeah.
Now that I think beauty has become so niche and nuanced, the world is so globalized. There's so many ways to be beautiful. It means so many things to so many different kinds of people that the specificity of it is an artistic problem that I think is so interesting for me to technically solve. And the skincare line really came out of that. It's all totally vertically integrated. If you want to have the best toolbox, you need to have a lot of different kinds of tools in it. And so my practice spans from the most invasive surgical procedures to little modern, minimally invasive things, injectable suture suspensions, lasers, all kinds of things like that. And then there are a lot of people who want to extend their results, or who frankly don't want to know me professionally and who want to just experience a little taste of it from their bathroom mirror and medicine cabinet, and that you can get very powerful skin quality improvements from topicals. So it's kind of that whole thing that made me want to do this.
So would you say that like our already building a skin aesthetics, plastic surgery business is hard on its own, that has its own unique challenges. And I'm sure customer service is you could probably give me some interesting stories, but then you say, okay, I'm a mother of 6. Let me launch into a new arena. Was that transition difficult, or did you already know, okay, I've conquered this, I've conquered 6 children, this is something I feel comfortable going into?
I really had no idea what I was doing when I tried to set out to build a consumer brand. I knew that I wanted to do the best and be the best. That's kind of been who I've been since I was 4 years old. And so I wanted to make the best products, but I really can truly say that I did not have any business experience. And it was a big school of hard knocks and a series of lessons in figuring out how to discuss that messaging, how to get, product compliance and packaging and sourcing and componentry and materials and FDA regulations and all of these little moving pieces. That's not involved in anything to do with medical school. Like, you can be really smart about looking through PubMed studies and really have no idea how to run a brand. And so it's been a huge learning experience for me. And it's been so fun. It really keeps my brain firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I find that the older I get, the more I need to find and learn new things. Otherwise, I find myself being like, okay, I know how to do that already. Yeah. And so I'm assuming that that's what part of this was. I need something else to keep you fired.
To keep challenging me and kind of keep it working.
Yeah. So as a doctor, as a working mother, as an entrepreneur, how do you sort of have your village? And how do you do this? Because everyone that says to me, like, how do you do it? You're a superwoman. And I'm like, no, I have a deep bench in the office, out of the office, right? That helps me, do all this.
Yeah. Yes. I have a lot of sources of support and strength and help, just on a very practical level. But I think I was told this advice that you've probably been told by somebody, and a lot of women are told that you can have it all, but not all at the same time. And there were phases in my life when I was just fully buried and immersed in surgery as a career. There were phases where I leaned into, like, basically my 30s, being very productive and reproductive. And then there are phases now.
And that was before you went out on your own. You were working in your 30s?
No, I started my private practice out of training, like out of residency fellowship. So I did a 6-year plastic surgery residency and fellowship at Columbia Cornell New York Presbyterian Hospital. And then I started my private practice. At that time, I was also taking care of emergency cases, especially facial fractures, lacerations, burn injuries, digit replantations, things like that, at a number of area hospitals while I was trying to get busy and just put myself into the world. And my whole concept of developing my private practice was just doing excellent work, one patient at a time. It was the simplest possible business model.
Yeah.
And it kind of spread. We had some really amazing, supportive patients who had public-facing profiles and celebrity patients that helped me a lot in becoming more well-known. But this is now the 11th year of my private practice.
Wow.
So, yeah.
How do you feel that it has to be you, right? Like it has to be me for what I do. There's no stand-in. And so for you, it's an art, right? It's not just like you can just have someone else come in your shoes. So tell me the good and the bad of that.
Yeah, it's one reason that I wanted to create my skincare line, because that's very scalable. I can reach people hundreds at a time, thousands at a time, 10,000s at a time. But with plastic surgery and procedural medicine, it's an N=1 experience. So you're treating people one at a time. And I don't believe that it's scalable. I think that there are a lot of business models out there where, you know, people disagree with me, but I think that there is something about the hand and mind and artistry of the person who's assessing facial optimization, kind of my term, that is hard to duplicate. So yeah, I like being that person who, when there's 1 second left on the shot clock, says, pass me the ball. Like,
right.
I make good decisions in difficult circumstances, and I'm extremely meticulous. So that's something about me that I've known for a long time and that I like.
Yeah.
So I like being that person. But, you know, you can't be in 5 places at once. I have missed countless events, school events, friends' birthday parties, weddings, like there's stuff. There was one particularly traumatic moment where I had a patient who had an issue and I needed to take care of her. And I had hyped up my little kids about going on their very first boat ever. We were going to take that silly boat around Manhattan Island.
Yeah.
And we literally missed the boat by like a minute. And I was like, I had to do the right thing for the patient. And I literally had 6 crying children, and we like trudged around and got an ice cream cone and then took an Uber back home. It was the most disappointing experience, but that's kind of that's the other side of the coin. When it seems so great and amazing to be the person who's making the decisions, then you're also the person who's there at 6:01 p.m. when the boat is like departing. And they're not coming back.
No, they're not. I know that feeling well. The number of times I feel like with my kids where I've been like, oh, we have to change course here. Like, I know I promised you this, but we have to. It's hard.
Yeah. I know I'm an hour late and I missed all of your important soccer goals. And I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
They can happen.
I know. It happens more often than I think I'd like to admit, but it does.
Same.
Yeah. So every time I've seen you at either work events or like when we met, you seem so calm and centered for someone who literally is like cutting open people's faces, giving them new breasts, fixing all these things. How do you stay this calm when, like, I don't know, if I was like touching someone's hair, I'd be scared.
Yeah, I think that is part of this long road of 10,000 hours, 20,000 hours of high acuity situations and kind of desensitization. And there's this funny line from a book called House of God, which is actually probably at this time a fully cancelable book, but it's about surgery culture. And one of the lines in that book is, in an emergency, take your own pulse. And I like that idea because that's sort of the place from which all busy women need to start thinking about life. Like, even if it's not an emergency, even if it's just a regular Wednesday and you're taking your kids to school and going to your job and managing your household, you have to take your own pulse. And if you're not centered, then nobody else can count on you.
Right.
You put your own oxygen.
I was just about to say that. Put it on first.
And then, so I feel like I need to do that so that I am personally and professionally balanced. So I don't feel big swings of emotion in my work. I don't get frazzled easily. I'm a very steady person. Yeah. But that's a good professional quality. Yeah. It makes it really hard to like read a book on the beach though. Like, I truly cannot unwind.
Oh, so you're always, even on the beach, there's a composure.
I'm a little composed and the cell phone ringer is always on. Like, I'm always like looking for sharks and sunburns and like, what is the worst case scenario?
Oh my God. I too look for sharks
It's scary.
I know. I've made my kids scared of the ocean, and I'm proud of it. I'm like, yes, you will not go in that ocean because you will die. There are sharks everywhere.
Oh my God.
So I would love to hear your thoughts, because there's so much great things that, like you were saying, you do something on someone that changes their life, their confidence, right? But I see an alarming trend with young girls, right? Like, I was shocked to hear about 9-year-olds on TikTok who have to have their drunk elephant.
Oh my God.
And my daughter's not even allowed on social media. And she's like, Mom, I got to do my skincare. Meanwhile, it's like organic, natural, whatever. But I'm still like, no, you don't have to do your skincare. Like, you're too young. So I'm curious your perspective on this, and like, how do we, if you disagree or agree, how do we sort of change that, I guess, in such young girls?
Yeah. I think it's a big problem, because although I'm very happy that social media and media in general allows us the opportunity to bring more awareness and factual knowledge about plastic surgery procedures, you know, the risks, the benefits, the alternatives, the indications. There's a lot of great stuff that's happening from more transparency. The flip side of that is that little kids are feeling more influenced to grow up so fast.
Yeah.
And I'm the mother of 6 young kids, and 2 of them are daughters, who are, you know, already at their young ages a little beauty oriented. They know what kind of hair bow they want and what type of, you know, sock color and scrunchie they're looking for. And I think youth is one of these precious and diminishing natural resources that we should try to, as a society, think about the time for this and the time for that. And the as long as I'm able to delay adulthood in my children, I'm going to.
Yeah.
Whether it means not giving them cell phones, limiting access to stuff. I have a really good beauty cabinet, so it's a lot of PR gifts, so it's really hard. But I do think that there is a difference between speaking to a fully formed adult about complex topics like identity and beauty and what it all means, versus creating this feeling of inadequacy in a young kid. And part of the reason that I think plastic surgery can be at its best is if it's coming from a place of yes and coming from a place of confidence. Like I can tell when I walk into a room if a patient is going to be happy or not happy with the surgical procedure, even if it's months before I do the procedure, because so much of it is about your attitude and mindset.
Right.
And if you look at a surgical procedure as an improvement over baseline versus if you look at it as a shortfall from perfection, those are 2 different people and 2 different worldviews. It's the glass half full and the glass half empty.
Right.
And so I think when we introduce beauty concepts to little kids, we're giving them the glass half empty idea. Like, you know, your totally dewy, perfect, youthful, collagen-boosted skin is not enough. You need some serum. Versus when you're talking to somebody who has more mature, formed ideas and they're trying to intervene in a more mindful way. So I think there's an age appropriateness to it. I try to personally limit all of that stuff. It's like when I read these articles about how Bill Gates didn't give his kids cell phones till they were, you know, whatever age.
That scares me.
I think about that for myself. Like, yeah, I'm not giving my kids access to this whole world of plastic surgery and medical aesthetics till they're as old an age as I can possibly push it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know it freaks me out when you say, even Steve Jobs, I think, delayed it or said it shouldn't be used as much. And I'm like, I already limit it, and they don't have phones, but they still see stuff, right? Or they say something. I'm like, where did you learn that?
I know. They know all the words to all the songs. They know all the YouTube shorts. It's everywhere.
I know. It's unless we don't have our phones, it's almost impossible to avoid, which is disheartening. So where do you see, I'm sure that you are tasked with innovation, on both sides, right? And so I feel like at least what I consume as a consumer, there's always something new. And I'm like, am I getting a thread? Am I getting a mini facelift? Am I getting like it's moving at the speed of light. So I'm curious how you stay up to date on everything that has to happen on both sides. And is that ever overwhelming?
Yeah. I thrive on academia and I love learning, and I'm really going to be a student forever in some way, shape, or form. So it doesn't feel overwhelming to me. It's what I like to do. I read medical journals and articles and textbooks and things like that for fun, see what my friends are up to, see what I'm up to. In terms of innovation on the plastic surgery side, innovation is going to look like the use of surgical techniques and anatomy with increasingly less invasive modalities. So smaller incisions, tinier access points, kind of like what cardiology and stenting did for cardiac surgery. Plastic surgery is headed in that direction because even though there's nothing cooler for me professionally than a big open surgery, nobody wants to have a surgery. You know, the game is how do we delay, defer, or deny the need for that. And so that's the future of plastic surgery. Less and less invasive, but using more and more invasive anatomy, still addressing deeper tissue planes, but in smaller, less visible ways. Because if you can see surgery, then something's not right. The best work goes undetected. In terms of skincare innovation, to me, looks like fewer, better products. We've gotten a little bit on this crazy
18-step program.
Yeah, the 18-step program. It's not practical. It's not necessary for most people. And it's also not achievable. We know from science that the best outcomes come from tissue or skin being in dynamic equilibrium or a homeostasis where, you know, it's basically always the same. There are little minor fluctuations, but you're not going like this. There's not a big sine wave with your face. And so figuring out how to identify the most effective ingredients and combine them into the fewest number of most palatable products. That's the answer. It's like the skin version of trying to avoid fast fashion and invest in a few great pieces. That's what we're trying to do with skincare. So progress in both areas looks like minimalism focused on longevity. You know, God willing, our generation is going to live to be 100, 120, hopefully.
Oh my gosh.
So it's kind of scary. It's cool, but it's also a problem because we have to think about not just how to physically have our molecules make ATP for that long, but we also have to think about how we're going to feel, how we'll look, how we'll relate to each other, how, you know, our mental health, our sexual health, our, you know, physiologic ability to walk up the stairs. All of that stuff.
So you said something before, the best work is work that you don't see. But I feel like we've been in this culture, and I know that your brand of aesthetics, I'd never see women look like this, but the duck lips, the overly, whatever this is called, or the boobs that are in your neck, like this culture of like beauty is only as similar to a Barbie, right? And I'm curious, when you receive a patient who wants that, like, what do you do, or I guess how do you feel about changing the narrative, like making the woman look her best? But we all don't need to be blow up dolls, frankly, right?
Absolutely. Partly on your best need to be that. I don't need to do that. First of all, I think there's some selection bias. So I built my entire career and practice on simply just putting my work into the world and before and after photos. And there's a lot of inherent subtleness in that work. So I sometimes say subtle is the new dramatic. And so people who want to come see me as patients are in some sense probably most likely to be pre-selected to think that that looks good. If someone wants something else, you know, I have friends who are, you know, their practice is all women who want to look like a blow-up doll. And, you know, for me, I think it's not such a common occurrence. So that's part one. And then I think part two is that beauty doesn't look like one thing. So even though I think that I have my own personal preferences and ideals and ideas, I want to give each one of my patients to have the permission to be their own kind of beautiful. I take care of patients who are trans, who have gender fluidity, who, you know, really hate their nose from this way, but they like it from this way, who have like grew up feeling self-conscious about breasts that are too big, too small. You know, there's no one definition of what a great looking, happy person looks like. And so part of my challenge is to give people my honest take and honest opinion about what's safe and medically responsible, but also to not impose my worldview on them. Like I'm capable of achieving many kinds of outcomes. And as society has become more nuanced, it's more common for me to have someone come in and say something like, okay, I want to fix my nose, but I want to make the tip like this, and I want to keep the bump because it reminds me of my dad's side of the family. And the super specificity is also part of the challenge. So I always give patients my honest opinion. I think part of what they're asking for is expertise and consultation, not just action.
Yeah.
Not like Burger King or number 7. If you want a conversation. But I also want to be mindful of the fact that I'm not in charge of how they look.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you're honest. I feel like sometimes someone might just say something because, you know, it's going to yield a bigger whatever, surgery or outcome.
Yeah, I try to have long-term relationships with all of my patients with no immediate payoff. Just try to give them big picture advice for this idea that if we're going to live for 50 or 100 more years, it better be advice that rings true over decades.
Totally. So one of the things I remember, especially during COVID, you were still doing surgery. I remember like getting your daily videos, like I'm on my way, you would be masked up, like the world was shut down, but you were still going. And I'm curious how you navigated that, because you are in an arena that was obviously heavily, like a lot of people put elective things off, right? And you were still able to keep going.
No, actually, we closed the practice for 4 months. Yeah.
So when you were going off to surgery, what were you doing?
So there was a 4-month lockdown on all elective procedures.
Okay.
And so during that time, I was really just like hanging with my family, like all of us. I was getting those text alerts that were like, in 1 more week, you could go back to work, but just stay at home for now. So it was a little wild, but we were able to fortunately keep all our employees, which was a huge victory, as you know, as a business owner. It was very challenging, but we diverted the entire medical practice team to the skincare line, and everyone worked from home.
Wow. And
focused on, marketing, storytelling, product dissemination into the world, writing, blogging, stuff in retrospect, really helped move the needle for the skincare line. That's how we landed our Sephora launch, because we were so great on socials during the pandemic. And so it was a big boost for us. And then that's actually also how we had the opportunity and time to build out and renovate this office location, because the builders weren't able to work on their other projects, but they were able to work on this one. And then after 4 months of the elective surgery lockdown, we basically followed the recommendations of the CDC about when it was okay to do elective surgery again. And then I was able to do that, I believe it was just under 4 months of closure.
Wow.
Very stressful. So it was, as you know, if I'm always worried about sunburns and sharks at the beach, I was like deeply worried about just mere existence during that time period.
I know.
But then we started working again when we were allowed to. Actually, I didn't do anything until then. And so then I started making my walk to work videos, and then
that's when I saw.
And then who knew that was going to become probably the biggest plastic surgery boom in our lifetimes, because everyone was still sort of working from home and recovering.
And also seeing themselves on Zoom and their jawlines sagging, and they're like, ooh, I got to do something about this.
Yes, the data from that period was hilarious, because it was like the number of visits to the bathroom and looking at the bathroom mirror when you're working from home versus working in an office. It's like 10 to 1.
100%. Oh my gosh. Well, you gave me life then. I was like, oh, good. Someone's going to work. Someone's out there.
True. Yeah.
So I like to ask this about all my guests, but what is a piece of advice you'd like to leave our listener with that either someone gave to you that was helpful, or that you have seen that you came up with on your own that's been great?
There are so many. I like this idea that the best type of change is iterative, this kind of 1% rule, where I've heard this in many different formats, but everything is in flux and there's no perfect answer. There's just the next best answer. So if every day you can decrease your incision by 1 millimeter, or decrease your blood loss by 1 cc, or improve your formulation by 1%, then you're getting there. And
right.
So in the face of challenges, just act as best you can, and then iterate and come out with your 2.0. And continue to do that, and you're going to be in a place that has totally changed the game. So that's what I sometimes like to think about, because, 10 years ago, I would have never put myself here now. I would have never felt like I had 6 children, a busy practice, a big skincare line, like all this stuff. Yeah, 3 cats, all this stuff going on. And I think those decisions feel like they're made all at once, but they're really just made one little incremental step at a time. So sometimes you have to just do the next right thing.
And I'd love to ask you, because it was something that we as a company, you know, it was at the time it felt like, oh my gosh, we now have to be a media company, right? In addition to just focusing on great handbags and shoes and clothing, now we have to be social and all the things, right? Have you ever felt like, oh my gosh, you enjoy the podcast, right? Otherwise you wouldn't be doing it, but like, and I got to do this, and I got to be here, and, you know, just to then service what the underlying base is, which is your skincare and plastic surgery.
Yeah, of course, everybody feels that way. Everyone wakes up occasionally feeling like, oh, okay, this is a long to-do list for today. Like, is this really necessary? But I don't know. I try to think about it positively, where it's an opportunity to put my tiny little voice into this big, big world. And I like this expression that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And people who choose to just take a back seat and, you know, yap about others are not the ones who are moving the needle for anything. So it's work, it's effort, it's risk, it's time, and it's a big commitment. Yet if you don't want to be in charge of your own narrative, then someone else will be in charge of your narrative for you.
That's true.
And in my field, in plastic surgery, over 90% of the voices in plastic surgery on Instagram and TikTok are not board certified plastic surgeons. So to me, I feel a sense of public safety. Wow. Almost. I collected along the way a master's degree in public health, so I think about biostatistics a lot. But, if the most qualified people are not in charge of the content, then it's just a bunch of misinformation getting regurgitated around. And so nobody who has gone to school for 28 years like me ever thought that they were going to be a public-facing person.
Right.
I'm just a surgeon and a mom and an ordinary person.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's some sense of responsibility for patient safety, for patient outcomes, correct information. So that's how I try to think about it when I'm feeling like it's another thing on my to-do list. I try to think about the good side of it.
Yeah. So 2 more questions, and then we'll turn the mics around. I encounter a lot of women moms, working, lots of career stuff, husband, wives, whatever. And how do I say this? Like, some of them are just like, I don't know how you do it. I'm so tired all the time. And they have 1/10 of the load that we have because we've branched out into so many things. And I'm like, I'm tired. I'm just choosing to not let it affect me, right? Or I'm not leading with that. And I feel like you've never led with that. And I'm curious how you got there.
They kind of beat it out of you in residency. You work for, I don't know, in my era, there were like 2 consecutive days of working. And
right.
It was like everything was super high acuity and you were running trauma call. And if you acted tired, someone was going to die. And so you had to just like shape up. And so like, I think that was kind of bred out of me. There's almost it's one of those things where you want to look back on it. You want it in your rearview mirror.
Yeah.
You don't want to be living in it because it's very painful, but it makes you so disciplined. Like it really makes you put aside little things like hunger or fatigue or whatever. But there's also that expression that if you want to get something done, ask a busy person.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it is time management, figuring out how when I'm in line to pick up my child from something, I'm like sending 3 emails. And when I have a moment of serenity, I have a lot of high, medium, and low acuity things on my to-do list at all times.
Yeah.
But also, I will say on a super practical level, I have been sleeping a little bit more. And that has helped me tremendously.
What's a little bit more? 10 minutes, an hour?
So I'm sleeping probably 8 hours a day.
That's great.
My whole adult life, I've slept 6 hours a day. Wow. And I just have added 2 hours of sleep to my day.
Oh my God, that's a game changer.
And I feel extremely alert.
Yeah.
And almost like I'm cosplaying someone else's life. Like I feel like I'm keyed into a 5th dimension.
Wow.
Awesome. So sleep is really important. And I think that I'm trying to do a better job of taking care of myself, putting my own oxygen mask on, as we were saying.
Yes. I've focused on that the last 2 years, and it's been a game changer and a more productive.
How much do you sleep?
So I still have a nursing child. So right now I'm getting broken 8 hours. But the last 2 weeks he's been waking up a lot to eat, and that he's in bed with me. So I'm open all night. I'm an all night buffet.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
That was a time.
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So when I say I'm more tired now,
There's a good reason for that.
There's a good reason. I know it's temporary, and I know I'm gonna like look back and be like, okay, I did my time. I have no regrets.
See, now my youngest is 5, and so all of my kids are very autonomous. They all know how to eat, go to the bathroom, brush their teeth.
Yeah.
They can all read. They can all do their tables. I'm like, it could be worse.
Totally. 100%. So last question is, what would we be surprised to know about you? You can't say sharks because that was surprising, but
Oh, really?
yeah.
I love ice cream.
Okay.
And whenever I'm offered ice cream, I will accept, even though I'm a little lactose intolerant, I have a mental carve out for ice cream.
Oh, well, that's good to know because
I'm always a GI carve out, but that's an overshare. But I love ice cream.
Oh my God. So I've had a long-standing partnership with Magnum, and they make vegan ice cream. So I'm going to send you some.
I should check it out.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, this is so fun. Thank you so much.
Oh my God. Thank you. And thank you for hosting here.
Of course.
How great is that?
I'm so happy. Well, that little ring, it kind of
came full circle
together.
That's right. I just wanted to thank you guys for listening to today's episode. I also want to ask you to rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts. I know it's a pain in the butt, but it actually helps with search and algorithms. So if you love this podcast, it is an easy way to get it more visible and out there. I also want you to follow me on Instagram at Rebecca Minkoff, at RM Superwomen, and be sure to check out my book, Fearless, The New Rules for Unlocking Creativity, Courage, and Success. Thank you again, and you will hear from me next week.